I make that 7 o'clock. Welcome to this evening's planning committee meeting, Tuesday the 16th of July 2024. First items on the business tonight is apologies. I have apologies from Councillor Jones, Councillor Beeston and Councillor Gordon. Do you have any further apologies? Not indicated. Thank you. Move on to item 2 on the agenda tonight. Declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest from members on items included in tonight's agenda. Do we have any such declarations from them? Acknowledgement if that's the case, we don't have. Evening, Councillor Chris. Maybe those in you too. The minutes of the previous meeting, item 3 on the agenda. Are we content that that's a true and accurate representation of the committee's meeting that took place? Can I see a show of hands, please, in acknowledgement of that? Thank you. That brings us on to the first substantive item on the agenda tonight. Application for major developments. Freelance Medical Land off West Avenue, Kidsgrove.
Thank you, Chair. So the application seeks full-time permission for 55 new residential dwellings, including open space and the new vehicle access at land of West Avenue, Kidsgrove. So the application site is located to the east of West Avenue, just above the commercial business of Reliance Medical. Recent residential developments are located to the west and east north of the site. So this is the proposed layout for the development. There will be a single central road running through the site, and the proposal also includes a locally equipped play area, which can be seen grey at the centre of the site. There's also an attenuation pond at the top part of the site, which forms part of the sustainable drainage system. So the development will comprise of a mixture of detached, semi-detached and terraced dwellings, as well as 3 apartment blocks, which will be located at the northern point of the site. Boundary treatments for rear gardens are to be 1.8 metre high vertical close wall fencing, plus a mixture of 1.2 metre high rail fencing, and railings will be used for more prominent positions within the site. No trees are to be removed as part of it. This is the map of the adopted highways. So the only bits not covered are a small section to the east and the car park for the apartments, which is at the northwest of the site. So here's an example of where the semi-detached property is proposed. The overall design style is traditional. All dwellings would be a mixture of red brick and white render, which mirrors out nearby properties. Side elevations for the properties also include windows and detailing to avoid any blank frontages. Got another example here of a very similar detached property proposed. Now, this is the street scene elevation for the apartment buildings on the northern section of the site. The design rationale for the apartments is that the 4- and 3-storey heights will provide staggered height frontage along West Avenue, which will then lead down to 2-storey properties. So this will help to soften the visual impacts of the neighbouring commercial unit of Reliance Medical, which you can see to the right. So here's a couple of photos of the site taken from the highway. So the commercial unit that you can see is Reliance Medical. So there's no issues in principle to the proposed development, given that it can utilise a brownfield site within the urban area of Borough. We've received no objections for any statutory constituencies, subject to a number of conditions. It's considered the matters relating to amenity, highways and design are acceptable. 25% of the houses will be affordable, which meets the council's standard requirements. The application is therefore brought to the committee with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to members. Councillor Field.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm happy to move this application. It seems to me to tick an awful lot of boxes. It's brownfield development, which is what we like. There are no trees going. I noticed that in the presentation. Looking at the layout of the site, it seems to be sensible. I don't think there's going to be any problems with waste and things of that nature. So I can see no problems here, and I will be pleased to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Councillor Ben. Sorry. Councillor Gillian.
Yeah, and I'm happy to second that. The only thing I would say, we've got a children's play area on there. It's a bit of children's play area over there because the new build at the side of it and across the road from it, it's also got a children's play area on it. That's the only comments I would make.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burnett. Do you have any other councillors wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Kitson.
Thank you, Chair. It mentions in the report bird boxes and bat boxes. If I can put in the shout for some swift bricks, please. Boxes can fall off and then look unsightly, but the bricks are actually built into the property, and there's no problem with ventilation or damp or anything. So if I can put in a request for some swift bricks, that'd be great. Thanks.
That'll be fine. We can sign that in with the condition. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any more indications to speak on this item. I'm quite happy to second Councillor B's proposal. Unless there's a counter proposal, I'm happy to go with that. Can I see a show of hands in support of the application? That's unanimous. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I should have said earlier, good evening to members of the public for joining us in the audience tonight. Just a little bit of housekeeping. No fire drills that are scheduled for tonight, but if there is any fire drills that do happen to go off, please make your way through the exit doors there, and we meet and assemble outside the building in front of the statue in front there. Thank you. Okay, on to this next item on the agenda, found on page 19 to 26 in the agenda pack. Item 5, application for major development, Diglake Farm, Bignell End Road.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning permission for a new dairy farm, which would be comprised of 4 new barns, a silage plant and a slurry lagoon at land up Bignell End Road. A similar size application was approved at Great Oak Farm in 2022, which is approximately 400 metres to the west of the site. However, the applicant has now chosen a more accessible site for the development. So the application site is located to the east of Bignell End Road. We would utilise an existing access track that connects to the highway. This is the site layout. The 4 new barns will be located in the northern section of the site, with the silage plant positioned below that, and then the slurry lagoon positioned within the southern part of the site. It's the elevation for the general purpose barn. It's got an appearance which is very typical of agricultural development. These are the elevational drawings for the milking parlour. Then these are the elevations of the main stock buildings. All buildings are to be constructed of Yorkshire board timber cladding with profile sheet roofs. Here are some photos looking into and out of the existing access track, which is into the Bignell End Road. Some photos of the main part of the site. And then we've got a photo of the site taken from the highway. So in respect to planning matters, there's no objection in principle to the creation of a new farm in this location. Although the site falls within the green belt, agricultural development is an accepted form of development within this designation. Visual impacts are not considered to be significantly different to the previous approval of Great Oak Farm. The generous landscaping scheme will result in some additional screening for the development, whilst also resulting in the net gain of trees. Highways Authority and the Council's Environmental Health Team have both been consulted but have not raised any objections, subject to a number of conditions. So subject to these conditions, the application is brought to this committee with a recommendation for.
Thank you, Charles. I believe we have an objector to the scheme, Judith Holmes. Would you like to address the committee, please? You have 5 minutes to make your case. After 4 minutes, I'd like to remind you that you've got a minute left. You may begin by pressing the button and short.
So none of these reports actually take into account the width of the road. Now, I live on that road and the road itself is only 4.5 metres wide. And if you take into account of tankers and tractors and also horses actually trying to pass on the road, it's not physically possible. I've also submitted by email today, and I do have photos with me, actual pictures of the road's condition. It's very, very poor. We've got issues with potholes, there's no curbs, there's no drainage down there. We have problems with water drainage off fields. We're going to have 32 tonnes basically of a tanker coming down every single day, 365 days a year. This is going to damage the roads. The images that you've been shown there are great. But if you look at the images I sent today, which were taken yesterday, the mud on the road is a danger. The report also says that there have been no accidents on the road up until 2022. That's correct. But recently, in the last 12 months, there has been several accidents again, to which I've provided images of cars on the roofs, in the fields, in my back garden. We've also got a children's care home that's behind me, and it's situated in a hall. So it's not just a care home for 3 or 4 children. This has a lot of children in, and we do have problem children. Now, these children also like to go down the lane with the carers and take walks and things. I don't think that's been taken into account, that we're going to have a lot of heavy traffic. We already have, according to the report again, nearly 100,000 vehicles come down that road in 4 days. At speeds of averaging 40 miles an hour, I think we said. I know that they come down a lot faster than that, the accidents. I just don't think, unless the council's happy to start looking at the condition of the road and whether they're happy with to keep the upkeep of the waste and the new tractors and maintenance vehicles and everything that they've suggested, they will be happy to road sweep, repair the potholes and generally upkeep. I'm also concerned of the smell. I live across the fields and I know the wind blows from that direction where the Slurry Lagoon is going to be, across the field, right into my house. We generally get average winds of around about 90 miles an hour. And generally, even in the summer, we can't put a parasol up because it just doesn't stop it because of the wind. So we normally get 35 mile an hour gust coming in from the property across the field. So I do have a few concerns. I'm in no way against farmers. I realise that we need them and we need them to survive. I just don't think this is an acceptable location for the amount of vehicles that are going to be coming up and down that road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. We have pictures that we're not able to display any of your pictures, unfortunately.
I've got the pictures with me if you would like them.
We can't do that in the.
I did email them through as requested before 12 o'clock today.
The officer just informed me that the cut-off date is before that.
I wasn't on the email, it did state.
What we requested from you was a copy of your presentation, into what you were going to read out. But it's policy of the planning committee that nobody other than planning officers are able to display material. No.
Okay, thank you. I'll now open it open to councillors for debate. Over to you. Councillor Sheard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I note that we have an excellent commission, don't we, for a very, very similar development, not very far away from this. I think 400 metres was what was said to us this evening. Could the officers just outline to members what the difference in access will be between those two? Because access seemed to be what we were hearing about just now was the main concern in this regard.
Yeah, so the development of Great Oak Farm, that had an existing access into the main farmstead. The road itself, which is Great Oak Road, it's actually a single lane road where you are kind of more reliant on single places for vehicles. So in that respect, this application is a slight betterment in that the Big Nine Road is wider, admittedly. It's not particularly wide at certain points, but it's an improvement of the previous one. But the Highways Authority have come back and said they've got no objections. There are some conditions, so they want to apply to the commission. So one of those is for an improved access point from where the existing lane meets Big Nine Road. So that would be attached to a permission. And the second condition is the submission of a construction and environmental management plan. As part of that, they have sort of mud and dust suppression details, but also wheel washing details as well to be submitted. So we would attach that to any permission given as well.
Thanks very much for that. I know particularly I'm comforted by the notion of wheel washing. So again, mud was mentioned, and that clearly is one way of alleviating that problem.
Councillor Beard. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm representative of the residents, and the lane is very narrow from the top of the roundabout, turn right, and Big Glen Road lane. But we've got no objections from the Highways Authority. And that throws a lot of weight in their decision. Just to emphasise the point on the public rights of way, officer, can we just, apply clear to the applicant that if the plan application goes through, it must not interfere with the public rights of way. There's two of them there, on the railway line, and also public right of way on the actual road. So, if we just make that point, the officers do.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams.
Could I just ask who actually will maintain this road?
Sure.
Will it be county? Oh, sorry. Who will maintain this road? Will it be the county or is it on the actual farm itself?
Big Nine Road, that be the jurisdiction of the Highways Authority, County Council. So the private access track itself, that may be just what's going to be the applicant themselves, but on the main highway, any damage to that could be County Council.
Any other councillors wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, can we have some sort of proposal? Councillors tonight, please. Council willing to make that? Okay, I'll happily propose it from the chair. Do I see a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Field. It's been formally proposed and seconded. I see a show of hands in support of the application as printed. Do your hands if you're in support. Any abstentions? Abstention. Any against? One against. That item is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening is application for major development, Horton House, the Midway, Newcastle-under-Lyme. Over to you, officer.
Thank you, Chair. Full planning permission is sought for the change of use and side extension to Morstan House to provide students only living accommodation in the form of 126 studios. The site lies within the Newcastle Town Centre Conservation Area. Members may recall that planning permission was refused in 2022 for the change of use and the upwards and side extensions to the building to provide students living accommodation. So just showing some photos of the building. I'm sure you're all aware of what it looks like. So that's on the Midway, and that's from Lower Street. So this is the scheme that was refused previously. There were two reasons for refusal, really. The first one was related to the excessive height, scale and massing and inappropriate design of the upward extension of the building and the resultant harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And secondly, the lack of parking provision within the site for the use of people with disabilities and the adverse impact on residential amenity. So an appeal against that decision was dismissed last year. So the previous scheme included a 3-storey increase in the height of the building, and in dismissing the appeal, the inspector concluded that the increase in the height would appear out of scale in its setting. So the scheme before us now has been revised so that there's no increase proposed in the height of the building. The main building will be predominantly finished in brick slip cladding. The new side infill extension, which was also proposed on the previous scheme, and you can just see here, would be finished in metal effect cladding, while the lower ground floor, this is the Lower Street elevation. So the lower ground floor would, which would infill the undercroft car park, would be clad in timber. And then the external area around the building would be landscaped. So as I say, that's the Lower Street elevation. That is the elevation fronting onto the Midway. So here is the a new entrance proposed into the building. This here is the bin store, and as referred to previously, that's the small extension to the side adjacent to the current Midway car park. And that's the side elevation fronting onto Church Street. That's another visual of the building that shows it in a little bit better detail. So again, this is from the Midway elevation. So there's the entrance into the site, into the building, sorry. And here's the extension to the side, which steps back and is in a lighter colour to reduce the visual impact. So as said previously, the material will predominantly be brick slip cladding. The colours that are shown on here haven't been agreed. So there is a condition proposed that would seek agreements of the details of the colours of the bricks. So this is the lower ground floor. So here we have a common area with snooker tables, seating areas. Here is a gym. This is a cinema room, and here is a bike store. And then this is the ground floor. So because the site slopes from the Midway down to Lower Street, that's why there's a lower ground floor. And this is the ground floor that would be accessed from the midway. So this is the bin store housed in this location. This is the entrance lobby that I pointed out on the elevations. And this is a floor plan of the remaining floors within the building, which is laid out entirely to rooms. So the site doesn't currently contribute positively to the character of this part of the town centre or to the conservation area. And given that this revised scheme would not increase the height of the building, it's not considered that there would be any detrimental impact on the conservation area. In fact, the introduction of student accommodation with more activity in natural surveillance should help to lift this particular area of the town. As with the previous scheme, no parking is proposed within the site, but a cycle store is proposed with capacity for 124 cycles. In determining the previous appeal, although the inspector accepted that the impact, there would be an impact on the conservation area through the increase in the height of the building, he didn't agree that any parking was required. So what he said was, he highlighted that the appeal site is in a central location from which shops and services can be reached on foot or in a wheelchair, and that public transport links to the universities are close by, with a lay-by outside the building allowing for pick-up or drop-off by car or taxi. So on that basis, he concluded that the provision of dedicated on-site parking is not necessary to make the appeal development acceptable. A short stay loading lay-by is proposed to the front of the site on Midway, which is considered suitable for deliveries and refuse collection, and also to accommodate pick-up and drop-offs at the start and end of term. So having regard to the conclusions of the inspector in relation to the previous scheme, and given the highly sustainable location of the proposed development, it's not considered that the lack of parking would have any significant adverse impact on highway safety, so as to justify a refusal on such grounds. The applicant has submitted a viability report which has been considered by an independent valuer. It has been concluded that the scheme is shown to be unviable and unable to support the requested level of Section 106 contributions. Notwithstanding this, the developer has agreed to fund the works to implement the loading bay on the Midway, which is a financial contribution of nearly £14,000.
Thank you, Rachel. We have a supporter of the scheme, Mr. David Tye, the agent for Butler Associates. Thank you. Would you like to take a seat? Then advised, got 5 minutes to make your case. After 4 minutes, you'll be reminded. Go a minute.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair and members. My name is David Tye. I'm a planning consultant with Paul Butler Associates, and I'm agent for this application and represent the applicant, WUKPG. This application proposes their first student housing investment in Newcastle, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak in support. As we've heard, since committee refused the previous application for a 3-storey extension with 194 bed spaces, my client's taken a fresh approach to Marston House. They've sought to develop a proposal which works with the existing mass of the building and does not require an upward extension. So the scheme before you proposes 126 studios, which is a far less attractive proposition financially, but nonetheless can be delivered if the developer retains the completed building as a long-term investment. Prior to the submission of the application, the applicant presented the scheme to SPG panel at Castle House last November. The scheme was well received by members who were complimentary in relation to the design, and the proposal was subsequently submitted to planning and being carefully assessed by officers. And we're supportive of the officer assessment and their recommendation. I'd like to highlight that Keele University have been really supportive of the application. They've set this out in a letter that they submitted to the council. Importantly, the university confirmed that they've got significant growth plans, which will see the student population at Keele increase by around 4,000 students to the 2027 academic year. And Keele's letting approach to their own on-campus accommodation is to prioritise first-year undergraduates. And this is only possible if sufficient off-campus accommodation is available for their later years of study. And the university really recognised the importance of high-quality student accommodation. It contributes to academic success, and really supportive of a kind of high-quality, centrally located development within the town centre. That's why they've supported the conversion of Morstan House. And they think that the studios that we're proposing are going to be very popular, particularly with overseas students, postgrads and medical students. So with your support this evening, Morstan House can be operational for the start of the 2027 academic year. And in addition to supporting the development of the university, the proposal will also bring new life, vitality and spending to the town centre. We believe that student spending here could be as much as £30,000 per month locally, going into the kind of town centre and the local economy, which is a real boost for local business. The applicant's proposal for car-free living is policy compliant. The relevant council policy is T17 of the 2003 local plan. And this states that development within the ring road will not be permitted to provide new private car parking. Obviously, the sites within the ring road had parking being incorporated, the proposal would have breached policy T17. Most importantly, the proposal fits with the council's adopted policy for the town centre being regenerated with attractive buildings, quality living accommodation, better facilities and a safer environment. No objections have been submitted and we believe the proposal's got widespread local support. The committee reports described how the scheme meets with national and local policy and with identified material considerations. We're repurposing a vacant building, greatly improving the appearance of the facades, supporting the expansion of the university and supporting the local economy. And the officer recommendation is minded to approve subject to conditions in 106. And we respectfully ask the committee support the application. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. To your seat. Okay, members, just to remind you that there's a small supplementary item. Now hand it over to yourselves there for debate. Over to you. Councillor Fear.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I think I may have been the member of the committee who proposed refusal of the previous application, and therefore I'm very pleased actually to say that I'm minded to support the application we've seen in front of us this evening. I think the developer has done what good developers do: listen to local opinion. So my concern was the scale and massive of the previous application. Here we've seen that we're not going to go up in scale, and my concern there would have been a building which began to overshadow St John's Church next door. And I think here we've got a building which doesn't do that in that regard. I am a little bit disappointed about the parking provision. I think this notion that students are all going to go on bikes. I mean, I'm a cyclist. I go up and down to Keele every day. I've yet to pass a student doing that. So I think it's a bit of a fantasy, but nonetheless, I know the inspector's reports, and I fear that were I to press that, my seed would fall upon stony ground, and therefore I'm not minded to do that. What I would say is that when we look at this, clearly the building is in an important position on Low Street. So we do need to think quite carefully about its finishing. Now, I noticed that in the past, the applicant has talked about sort of having a lighter brick set and such like. When I looked at the church, I wonder actually whether the brick set that we have at the moment isn't in fact the appropriate one to have there. So I would like the applicant to think about that. Equally, of course, we are looking to the future. And next door, we've got the Midway car park, and there again, we've got big development proposals. So I would like to ask our officers whether we could attach a note this evening. And as I say, I am minded to support this application, but to ask the developer here to talk to Capital Centric, the developer next door, so that on Lower Street we have a nice facade which runs from the Midway car park through this building over to the Belong building, so that we have a nice armature running through the town centre, which makes sense rather than being a sort of random set of developments and so forth. But beyond that, I also welcome, I know last time the committee had lots of worries about if this was student accommodation, how people would come into town, how they go out of town. So I very much welcome their offer to build in the little lay-by, such like on the Midway, to make traffic flow easier that way. So overall, I think this is very much better than last time round. And as I say, I'll listen to the debate, but I am at the moment strongly minded to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor B, and I support what you say in principle. I think the comments you make, particularly about the colour arrangement of the facade, is important to the town sense of appearance. Thank you for your support. I will open it up to councillors again. Over to you, councillors.
Thank you, Chair. It was only to agree with Councillor Fear. I think the parking situation is disappointing. However, we can only go on what the planning inspectorate says. So whilst it is disappointing, I'm minded to agree with Councillor Fear that it is a big improvement on the last one.
Thank you, Councillor Bryan. Councillor John Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Council. Yeah, that's right, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a planning game in the sense where the design fits into what we said from the kick-off. To, you know, the matting of the building, we greatly reduced from the first plan application. So I've got real praise on that one. And I agree with the finishing of the building, what brick we use. And is it left to the officers? Big deal to leave themselves, or will they yourself and the vice chair get involved with, or maybe come back to the planning committee with some samples, so that we could agree on. I think it's an important point. It is an important point in the town centre. When alongside the 834, it is important to in one position. Also, I agree with we should be talking to Capital Centric, because Midway at the moment, it's actually what I find isn't even. It's said before, you know, it's dirty, it's dark, it's not very nice for people to walk through, especially in the winter months. Just one point that I noticed, the police complimented the developer on what they did to install, and I think I'm right in saying where the garden is, you've got a lock gate where only the occupants of the building can get in. So I'm really pleased about that. Security, as we all try the bridge later on, but security is an eye on the eye grade. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other councillors wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Bushels.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask the officers if they're happy with the size of the bin store? And also from April 2026, all flats will be required to recycle food waste. So every one of the studio flats will need a small bin caddy that the students will then have to carry downstairs. So I'm just putting the bin store area. We're probably going to be doing purple bins for the food waste. But how's the ventilation going to be in this bin store? And with the actual developer be responsible for cleaning it out every now and again, just to make sure everything smells as it should.
Thank you, Chair. Just commenting on a couple of points that have been made, and then I'll just answer Councillor Hutchison. Reference was made to whether we could put a note on the planning permission that asked the developer to have a conversation with Capital and Century. Yes, absolutely. That's we couldn't, and I know that wasn't the suggestion, but we couldn't require that by condition, but we could certainly put a note on requesting that that happens. Councillor Williams referred to getting details agreed of the materials and whether that would come back to committee. Ordinarily, any condition applications, it's down to officers to determine those. Members can, if they so wish, request that it comes back to committee, or perhaps a compromise would be for officers to get the agreement of the chair and the vice chair, if you're happy with that.
So, thank you.
Yeah, okay. In terms of the bin store, so it's this area here, so it's certainly big enough to hold a number of the large bins, and the management of that area and making sure that it was looked after would be through the management of the rest of the building. The developer is retaining the building, and yeah, presumably they'll have some sort of management company or their own staff that will be managing, and it's got it's various office facilities and everything else that will be will all have to be managed. So yeah, that would all be part of that same thing.
Thank you for that. Are you happy with that comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Any other comments, please? Councillor Field.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. No, I just, having heard what members have to say, I'm happy to formally move the resolution as printed, with the addition of attaching a note to urge, and I take the opposite point entirely, we cannot compel, but to urge the developer to speak to their neighbour, Capital Centric. And I certainly don't want anything to come back to the committee, because if we think this is a good thing, we should let people get on with it. But at the same time, I think it would be nice if your good self and vice chairman had sight of the finishing materials. So with those two additional little riders, I'm happy to move that we accept this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. I'll take on board your comments in terms of compel the developer. Being as the developer has taken part in consultations with ourselves at SBCG in the past, and we welcome that sort of collaborative approach, and hope that that would continue beyond the decision of this committee. So we've had it formally proposed by Councillor Fear with the additional caveats placed with it. Do we see a formal second there? Councillor Hutchins. Thank you. Councillors, can I see a show of hands in support of this application? And that is unanimous. That item is clearly carried. Thank you. On to item 7 now, to be found on pages 41 to 48 of the open pack. Application for major development for Newcastle Limited, Borough Road.
Thank you, Chair. So the application seeks planning permission for 2 new industrial buildings and a batching plant for Borough Limited. So the batching plant has already been constructed, so the application is part of the perspective. So in respect to location, the site lies within the Borough Industrial Estate to the north of Oakdale Road. And the proposal will be located within a central part of the site, with the batching plant proposed manufacturing building to be located to the northeast of an existing warehouse, and the smaller paint plant proposed building, which is to be located to the south. So these are the elevational drawings for the larger warehouse and batching plant. So the building at the top left and top right is an existing structure. Neither the new building or the plan exceeds the height of the building, which will help to screen the proposal to the view. So the warehouse would have a typical commercial appearance. We constructed a few spring grey cladding, which matches other nearby buildings within the site. So this is the paint building, which is more the scale, measures 24 metres by 14.5 metres in plan. And it would be constructed with the same using grey cladding as the other units. So here's a picture of the batching plant as viewed from the south. This picture shows the location of the larger warehouses viewed from the north. And then this is a photo taken from Oakdale Road. So the proposal would be located just to the left of that grey building in the centre. So there's not considered to be any immunity or highways issues relevant to the proposal. There's been no objections received from any of our statutory consultees or from local residents, and the application is therefore brought to committee with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Charles. There are no speakers on this item. Over to you, members. Councillor John Mullins.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move this plan application. Because we've seen this develop, this company expand. Started off, it used to be the timber yard many years ago. And opposite to that, there was concrete, making concrete, whatever the new, not quite certain. So I'm pleased to see this business move on. And this is a business that we need in the borough. I'd like to go on by making a point that really it's right next door to the country park. What a fantastic country park it is. Lovely paths, and castles and all the rest of it with railway, hoping to extend along the side of this planning application. But they have got quite a lot of drainage treatment besides the works from the lower ground country park. But again, there was originally an industrial, brickyards, gasworks, coal mine, and all that many years ago. So really, to move on from that, we get here fast, but at the same time, we've got to these businesses are actually bringing jobs to the area. So just one ride, I'd just like to make the point is where they can ask the applicant to do as much boundary treatment. Put more and more boundary treatment in. I know on Oakdale Road, I think the palisade fencing, which I personally dislike. But again, can we ask them to put, where possible, to put more and more boundary treatments in the sense where put more trees and edges that grow wide to they can hang. So that will, on the low ground, it will hide the work, the factory. Of course, on the high ground, you can oversee that, but that's where we are. So thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'd like to second Councillor Williams's proposal. And yes, I also agree with him very strongly about the Oakdale Country Park. I visit there on a regular basis, and it is a wonderful local place. I think here, if you look at the company, they've tried hard. This is never going to be a beautiful thing. Let's be honest about it. It can't be. But they've certainly tried, I think, to embed this in their site in a way that does not make it more prominent than what is there at the moment. I also take Councillor Williams's point quite rightly about jobs. There's no point in having a beautiful countryside if people can't afford to enjoy it. So we do need jobs. this has been a good company. I think this is a sensible proposal. When I look at the proposal, I think this company has taken time to try and alleviate to the best of its ability this structure, which is never going to be handsome. So I think that all around this is a planning gain, and I am happy to second what Councillor Williams has said.
Thank you, Councillor Bean. Any other councillors wishing to speak? Need to come back on the comments or the additional people.
Yeah, it would be difficult to add a condition to this one because we can only alter things within the red line boundary shown on the slide. So we can't incorporate new boundary treatments into this one. If it was perhaps a different expansion of the business and it become the entirety of the site, we could absolutely do that. But I think for this particular one, it would be difficult for us to justify a condition.
Just talk to the property at that point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charles. Okay, we've had it formally proposed by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Beard. I can't hear any other council proposals. Can I see show of hands, please, in support of this? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Thanks, item is passed. That brings us on to item 8 on the agenda, application for minor development, Peaks Farm Station Road. Mr. Moss, pages 49, 58 of your agenda pack.
Thank you. So the application seeks planning permission for a new slurry lagoon for Peaks Farm in Honolulu. So the application site is located on Station Road. It's located to the southeast of the main part of the village. It's highlighted in red on this location around the centre. So this is the site plan for the proposal. The buildings shown to the north are existing buildings which make up the main part of the farm. The lagoon, as shown in red, would be positioned to the south of these buildings. So the buildings to the northeast and east are residential properties. The nearest of which is the one nearest to the top middle centre, is approximately 100 metres away from the proposed lagoon. So the slurry lagoon itself would measure 100 metres by 40 metres and will be surrounded on sides by a 0.9 metre high raised earth bank and a 1.2 metre high safety fence. And a floating cover would be used to cover the surface of the lagoon. So here's a photo taken from the east of the site, facing towards the position of the lagoon. The similar photo there as well. So we've received objections from the parish council and from local residents regarding a number of issues, with a particular focus on noise, odour, highways impacts, flooding, and errors in the details submitted with the application. The application is to be supported by a noise and odour assessment, which were reviewed by the council's environmental health team, who confirmed they've raised no objections to the proposal. However, given the additional comments received by residents, we felt it's appropriate to approach the health team for again further comments. They've confirmed again that they still raised no objections to the proposal, but they have suggested that additional conditions can be used to further safeguard residents from the development. These conditions are covered in the supplementary report. So, with regards to flood risk and potential pollution of nearby water sources, the site falls within flood zone 1, so it's at the lowest risk of flooding, but part of the site does fall within a low risk area of surface water flooding, which is a risk between 0.1% and 1% chance of the year of surface water flooding. So issues related to potential pollutants into water sources are covered by legislation set out by the Environment Agency. Mass of surface water flooding is covered by legislation set out by the Lead Flood Authority. But in this case, subject to conditions recommended by the environmental health team, it's considered that any harm from odour and noise can be mitigated, and the visual impacts of the proposal are not considered to be significant. The application is therefore brought to the committee with a recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Charles. And before we proceed any further, just to remind members of the supplementary report with the revised recommendations on page 55 of the agenda pack related to this application. Now, I have no speakers that want to support the application, but I've got 3 speakers that are objecting, and I'll take these in order of, we'll have Ward Councillor Jill Whitmore first, followed by Parish Councillor Jake Stevenson, and then finally neighbour Mrs Wyatt. So if Councillor Jill Whitmore would like to approach the committee, please, may press them when you're ready, pressing the button in front of you.
Excuse me, Chair, I have got some for as well. I've been speaking to residents today. I've got proposals for and proposals for against.
Okay, that's fine. Would you like to address the committee?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like you to consider the following objections to this planning application. The current location sites of slurry close to residential properties and the watercourse that runs into the River Lee, and furthermore into Mayford Court, which has been polluted before by that on. So we're asking, will there be a warning system to alert people regarding leaks from the slurry? There are serious concerns about the methane and carbon dioxide emissions, and we want to ask, has there been a Windrose report done on this? And if so, will the site be monitored yearly if the application is passed? And were any alternative location looked at when you were thinking about the planning away from the residential areas? And want to ensure that the walls and the base should be impermeable to the liquid being held in the slurry and should be sited in low permeable soils or on an artificial lining. Has this been checked? That is against. Now I've got a couple that I've been speaking to today for the application, and they're saying there will be less traffic down Station Road as now the waste will be stored in the slurry. At the moment, it's spread on the land, and there's more tractors going down there, which there won't be when it's stored in slurry. And the farmer needs slurries by law. And if the farm meets all the regulars stated in the 11 regulations that have come out today, they are saying there's no reason for the objection to be going forward. And that's the case, for and against.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmore. You may return to your seat. Now call upon Mr James Stevenson, Chair of Main Parish Council.
Chair, I think my clerk has inadvertently put the wrong name down, which has been Councillor Hopkin. I can speak, but I'll be ad-libbing, whereas he's actually prepared for it.
Okay, I'll take that on that basis then. Mr Lampkin, you've got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Good evening, Chair. Mr. Committee. My name is Chris Hopkin. I'm a member of the planning group of Mayford Parish Council, which deals with planning applications within the borough. I'm also an honorary resident. Having carried out a site inspection after the application was made, together with the applicants and borough councillors Simon White and Gary White, who of course now left the authority. This was then followed by a visit to the home of Mrs Wyatt, one of the objectors, and it was then that the parish council decided to object to the application on the basis of the paucity of information, re noise and odour pollution, and the absence of an effective plan B from the applicants. Clearly there's been an 11th hour change in the conditions that now to be imposed, as we've been advised, but we haven't had time to consider those, and indeed we don't even have full details of what they are to be. Notwithstanding the new situation, we decided to let you know the parish council's view generally on the application itself. It is acknowledged as the farm grows, the herd grows, and with Onley being in a naturally vulnerable zone, there has to be a facility whereby the extra slurry produced can be dealt with. Although it seems to me a large enclosed silo would be a preferable way of dealing with the slurry, the applicant prefers a slurry lagoon. That's his choice, but to me a silo would be infinitely preferable, as a slurry lagoon is at a far greater risk of leakages, and the slurry has to be manually stirred. There are details in government sites as to how dangerous these slurry lagoons can be, with various deaths of people falling into. The problems are the lagoon's location, with the risk of pollution to the watercourses, coupled with the risk of what is in effect a tarpaulin cover capable of being ripped. Harvest Council Whitmore has said in previous cases of pollution from this farm site, where ultimately dozens, if not hundreds, of fish were killed in major pools some 10 or 12 years ago. The proposed site adjacent to the existing farm facilities is also close to the tributary to the River Lee that wends its way to the pool, and also close to residents' property. I find it surprising that Donnelly has said not to be a flood risk. Before this application was made, I have in the past negotiated with your own chairman here regarding the flood risk in his position within the county council. Indeed, the residents most at risk from this application still have sandbags on their property boundaries. Although only a few residents are potentially affected, if a plan B alleviates that, it should be seriously considered. It won't necessarily reduce the noise pollution, but a site up and over the hill 100 metres from where the applicant proposes siting the lagoon would be preferable both from leases to the tributary and its greater distance from residents, who really should be the prime consideration. A further potential option, Plan C, could see a slurry lagoon sited to the northeast of the site, across Station Road, up to the hill in the direction of Barn Hill, where there are no watercourses or residential properties. Our other concerns are noise from vehicles accessing and exiting the site for up to 16 hours per day, and the dust and other materials that will be in the atmosphere, which themselves will be detrimental to health. Station Road is already traversed dozens of times per day by tractors and trailers from this site, which to my eye seems to have increased, which I would submit can only increase further. I know Mrs. White and her husband have details of the activity around the lagoon cover and have produced a large amount of statistics in relation to this and many other aspects of this application, which she's provided in a report form. As I said, the parish council is not against such development. It is the logistics of it to ensure that the minimum disruption to residents is caused. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. You may return to your seat. Thank you. Lastly, we have Mr. Jane Wyatt, who's also objecting to the proposal. Come on, take a seat, please. Got 5 minutes, like everybody else. 4 minutes, you'll be reminded you've got a minute left. You may start when you're ready. Press the button in front of you.
There are many better locations that do not risk a catastrophic pollution risk to major conservation pond and to residents, and could even be cut directly out to the G5. There are substantial reports on the portal from myself and my husband that are raising about 30 or 40 issues regarding this, most of which have been brushed over by the report by the planning officer. Floodwater runs off the clay down from Olive Hall, where this lagoon is proposed, and flash floods this area. Planning have harmed us a great deal by making this mistake before of stating we are not in a flood area. So many apologies from councillors and from highways are flooding us for 5 years and causing me to have a nervous breakdown. 100 sandbags and flood gates, water keeping us up at night. We have photographs which we offered to planning of the flooding all around this area, including in the paddock where this lagoon is proposed. Planning has regularly been able unable to enforce conditions at this farm, and after several years of trying the farm applied to have them lifted, and planning supports it. I hope to show you that proper review has failed here, as has due process. Odour, air quality and noise issues cannot be properly addressed, therefore nor can the impact on residential amenity. Substantial reports have been submitted which call into question much of the farm figures the planning officer report relies on. Many greatly disparate with real life experience with no substantiation, having ignored requests from Environment Protection to validate. For example, the farm has repeated noise nuisance complaints. The silent farm noise report you see in this application is paid and organised for by the farm. It's not in any way representative of reality. Failures in due process. We were not notified through the Borough Council system when major alterations to the application were uploaded, despite on asking being assured by the planning officer we would be informed as interested parties, given it was several months later and fundamental changes in the application detailed. Had interested parties been alerted, we would have pointed out that the issues raised by the Environment Protection Manager, Environment Health, who objected, had not been satisfied at a material level before reports were delivered, and we would not be in this situation. Major staffing difficulties at Environment Protection resulted in an inadequate EP response that failed to meet the requirements of the EP's manager's objection to this proposal. He is not currently working. The stand-in for the report has subsequently left EP. We contacted EP and were initially informed that there was no capacity. However, after I sent the report highlighting failures to meet EP's requirements, further analysis of only existing data has been allowed at the last minute. It confirmed pretty much all the issues raised were correct. However, EP has not been given time needed to do a proper review or garner any missing information or redo any assessments, only to condition, which is totally inadequate given the emissions contradictions and erroneous data. Despite providing references of cover reductions in emissions much less than the 90% quoted by Redmond's, for an engineered floating cover for odour and toxic gas, Environment Protection simply did not have real time to challenge to use 60% or below quoted in many other places, including environment impact studies by the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology and people selling these covers. I sent 2 reputable links, but the 90 has been used, so we did some investigation into this figure. Redmore Environmental, who did both the air and border reports, paid for by the applicant, which we have had to correct multiple times. They indeed state 90% as a blank figure for the reduction of emissions for an engineered cover. They use this data to reduce odour emissions by a factor of 10. This comes from the Sniffer ER26 Guidance 2014. The document bases its figures on a report from the University in Ontario 2006 English and Fleming, which actually quotes 60%, not 90. 60 to 78%. So their own report, when you follow it through, is incorrect. The 90% is for far more sophisticated, engineered, pressurized dome covers. So their own reference it goes from 60% to a maximum of 78%. That this must be rectified immediately. Using 60 rather than 90 for reduction increases odour emissions by a factor of 400%. This would take odour on our property to 6.52, which Redmond's own report would be rated as significant with the cover on. Sorry.
Right, can you just wrap up there at that point, please?
Okay. There are many other errors which there are errors throughout. It's assumed that the cover will remain on at all times and never be removed. And none of the Environment Protection Officer made a list that was required of the design elements of the cover. So he asked for how the pumps would work on the top, whether the pipes would be in, whether there'd be vents or whatever. None of this was provided by mistake. And I have raised this in a report that I circulated to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman. Thank you. Maybe change to your seat, please. Thank you, members. You will have heard the information passed this evening by the speakers. Just asking the officers to come back on what's been said. Thank you.
So I'll start with the initial points. I think the first one with regards to some sort of alarm system is sort of the damaging. I don't think realistically we would have any way of controlling that through a condition. I mean, any permission given would still need to be subject to building regulations. But no, we wouldn't be able to basically condition that as some sort of alarm system like that. In regards to monitoring, one of the proposed conditions is for odor noise management, so we would have to condition that. In respect to considering other locations, there's no planning policy that requires the applicant to provide any sort of sequential testing where they would like to place the lagoon. So in essence, we have to assess each application on its own constraints and merits. We can't ask for them to provide a list of other possible locations as part of the submission. Regard to security and safety, there's no public right of way directly adjacent to the site. There is one nearby, but it is some distance from the lagoon. But more than that, there would be a security fence around the lagoon to stop people entering it or getting close to it. The actual cover to be used on the lagoon. So following the additional comments provided by the environmental health team, they've suggested that commission is attached to any permission so that they submit the exact details of that cover to the local authority, and that will go back to the environmental health team for consideration. Respect of the in respect of flooding, when we look at the flood maps, we are reliant on the ones provided by the Environment Agency. So it's not to say there hasn't been flooding in the past, but it falls within flood zone 1. Like I said previously, it does fall within a low chance of surface water flooding, but these matters in terms of potential runoff and pollution taken over by legislation, which is set. Those controlled by the planning department. In respect of consulting on revised information, when we did receive the revised noise and odour assessment, we didn't consult residents on that information. We don't normally take that approach with technical information. We simply pass on to the relevant consultees for inspection.
It wasn't that, was the errors in the application. Corrected.
Yeah, again, in respect of sort of noise, from the development, another condition is for construction and environmental management plan to be used. So that would control issues such as traffic movements throughout the site, as well to ensure that vehicles can use the main accesses from the farm, which you can see on the block plan, rather than having to go past nearby houses. Yeah, I think that's good. Most of the room, that's it. That's really good information.
Thank you, Charles. I understand some of the frustrations in terms of acknowledgement of the flood zone risk. I'm well aware of some of the issues that affect the area in terms of flooding, and that's constantly been a thorn in the highways department of the county council. But we have to go within the remit of what we've got here available today. Flood zone has been recognised as flood zone 1. Until that is changed by the flooding team or the appropriate legislation, we have to work within the parameters of that. So I'll now hand it over to the committee, please, for debate. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask officers if they believe that the application has been reviewed thoroughly by environmental health, or whether they think it has been rushed through or not. Thank you.
We wouldn't be bringing an application before the committee unless we were satisfied that it had been thoroughly assessed by the appropriate consultees. So we sent consultations out initially on the application, and we received comments from the Environmental Health Division, raising no objections. So on that basis, we moved forward to make a recommendation and prepare the report for committee. It was on receipt of additional information that we took the decision to have a further conversation with environmental health, and because the previous officer that had commented had left the authority, there was another officer that we spoke to, and he considered it thoroughly. I would say he spent several hours looking at it.
Please, can you not call out from the audience, please?
As I said, he spent several hours considering it because I know that he did for a fact, and he provided us with his recommendations, which were that he agreed with the initial comments from his colleague, but he did believe that some additional conditions would be beneficial. So officers considered those conditions and felt that it would be appropriate to add those, and so the supplementary report was circulated to members with those added into the recommendation. So yes, and that's your question, we're absolutely satisfied that our colleagues in environmental health have considered the application thoroughly.
Want to come back on that?
Yeah, would the application benefit from further in-depth review from environmental health, or do you feel that it has had the sufficient amount of time? I'm guessing you feel it has, based on previous reports.
I do feel that it has sufficient time. Two different officers, professional officers, have commented on the application, and both have concluded that they have no objections subject to the imposition of conditions, and that's what we're recommending.
Councillor Beard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there's some interesting questions here, but I think we need to think about some fundamentals as well. I mean, the first one, as I see it, is that I've always taken it as a basic point of planning that it's not for us to tell applicants what they must do, but for us to show why what they propose is wrong. In other words, we may feel that there is a better place for this thing, but that's not for us to decide this evening. It's to decide whether what is proposed is wrong rather than it's preferable. I'm assuming, and I look to our officers to confirm this, that there are building regulations around the construction of a slurry pool in this respect, in terms of the way that the thing is lined itself, the integrity of the walls and such like. And again, I just like confirmation that that is not really a planning consideration this evening. That's a consideration of building regulations, and this would not be allowed to proceed were those regulations not conform to. My other question is about the issue that's been raised, the proximity of the structure to water and such like. Am I correct in thinking that it's the Environment Agency who is the expert body, so to speak, who sit in judgment on this? And am I correct in saying that from the report, as I read it, the Environment Agency has not raised any objections in that regard? I'm not an expert in this, and therefore I seek guidance from those who are. So I'd be interested to know what the answer to that question is.
Sure.
Yeah, so the first point, you're absolutely right. In regard to building regulations, it will still need to pass that, even if planning permission was approved. They are two separate regimes in that respect. One doesn't necessarily guarantee the approval of the other, so it would need to have both planning permission and building regs moving forward. With regards to the Environment Agency, they have come back and said they've got no objections. There may be other licenses or permits they need from the Environment Agency, but we can't control those from a planning point of view. That would need to be controlled by the Environment Agency themselves, their own legislation.
Any further comments, councillors? No.
Can I ask about the cover that's actually going over this? And I am understanding that it's like a tarpaulin type cover. And if it is, then what my question is why would it not be like a hard cover that would seal anything in anyway? And it would also be safer for the slurry and for anybody who should happen to wonder where it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure what the reason behind why it's not a solid cover is. There might be some purpose behind it. But what we would do, if permission was granted, would condition the exact details of that cover to be submitted to the Environment Health Team to be considered. And if they were happy with it, they could actually just do whatever it might be, or refuse that condition if they feel it's appropriate. But those exact details that we would want to place in condition. In the sense to make sure that it's appropriate. But I think in regard to sort of safety, those kind of matters, the fencing and the actual earth mound around it is, you can sort of deter people from going there into it.
Charles, any other comments?
This is
Absolutely.
why can't we have that guarantee now? Yeah, I put it down.
Right, yeah.
Sorry. If they are going to put the cover on, why can't we have that guarantee now that it's going to be passed before they actually buy in? To be quite honest, I'm not happy with this now, I'm not supporting.
I mean, it's a part of the proposal, it would definitely always have the cover, but I suppose our environment health team just want to make sure it's as suitable as it possibly can be. So it might be that it's not enough details provided in the application to satisfy the environment health team's concerns in that respect. So they want to see those final details. They obviously presume that it is acceptable in some form, but they want to see the final details for approval.
Consent to that. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't agree to this met because to me, I'm not an engineer, but I've seen a lot of these slurry pits aboard the country. And then I've seen them in concrete size, concrete base. This to me, to all the substance, is flimsy. Self-moving, you know, somebody put in a fish pond, and yet they're expecting machinery to go in there. So I'm really, I'm not happy with actually the construction. And that takes you on to the contamination of the river that's been, any evidence that it has fallen into the river leaving the spawn and then down to the pond in Maydew. And I'm concerned with that those environmental issues. I think in this day and age, we ought to be able to better construction to all this substance than this proposed. So I certainly don't agree with the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John Williams. Any other members wishing to speak on this matter? Anybody else wishing to contribute to the debate? Councillor Chris? Thank you.
Yeah, but just in regard to construction details, they would really be more covered by building regulations rather than planning in terms of the exact sort of how it's constructed. Yeah, so it's not something that I could advise on.
Thank you. Are members in a position yet to formally propose or support or decline this application at this point? Is there any further guidance? Any councillors wishing to make a proposal?
I propose that I'm against. Sorry. I propose against the development.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Ryan.
I was only going to add that I appreciate what residents are saying and what Councillor Williams and Councillor Williams are saying, but as of yet, I haven't heard a reason that we can refuse yet. Whilst I appreciate everything that I'm hearing, I just don't hear anything that we can pin it on.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. You're quite correct. Councillor Williams, have you got a definitive reason for refusal? Please support your proposal.
I'm just not convinced at all, and it probably won't be a planning. I'm just not convinced this firm are willing to do this form of developer is willing to do his best for the area, to be quite frank. And I don't think we've been given a good enough case. We haven't got enough information. It's all the environment we've said here. I think we should have had an environmental officer here tonight.
So let me for clarification then, councillor, you're saying insufficient information to make this determination at this point.
I do, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Fear, not councillor Fear, councillor Chris.
We've heard a lot of information about the safety of slurry, but I don't think any of us on this side are an expert on it. But if you were going to not pass it, we have to have a good reason, and the reason seems to be is within the building regulations, not within the planning proposal. So what would it be that we just don't trust building regulations? That doesn't seem like a sound reason to dismiss it.
Councillor Chris, councillor Fear.
No, it's really to reiterate what councillor Chris has just articulated, that if we're going to refuse this, I mean, there are many things in this world that we might find distasteful, but that's not to say that they are wrong. It's not for us to suggest where this should go. It's for us to say why it should not go here, and we need to provide a definitive reason for that. Now, I don't see that the Environment Agency, who I believe are the authority who oversee these things, have given concerns for this at this point. We've heard about flooding, but we've also heard about the zone it's in. I haven't heard that the local flood authority have raised any concerns about this. Equally, I don't think any of us here are in a position to challenge building regulations. If building regulations say this is the way something should be constructed, that is the way it should be constructed. And those things can be checked as this structure is constructed. So in that regard, I struggle to see what grounds there are to vote against this. And I think, we ought to realise this. I think we are wide open to an appeal against that on the grounds that any rejection here so far, as I've heard, will be ill-founded.
Thank you for that contribution, councillor Fear. The councillors wishing to make a proposal, the reason. I think I'm inclined to agree with councillor Fear at the moment. I haven't heard of anything that you can actually substantially object to. This is a valid reason that wouldn't be overturned to appeal.
Chairman, am I allowed to speak or not?
No, you're not. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Even if we can provide a reason.
I think just really to reiterate what councillor Fear has said, that if members were to refuse the application, that reason for refusal has to be very specific and it has to be substantiated. We need to, if there was an appeal against that decision to refuse, the council would have to substantiate that reason for refusal with evidence. So first of all, the reason for refusal needs to be specific. It needs to make reference to how it is contrary to development plan policies. And we've not heard any of that yet. We're not able to be influenced by how an applicant may have behaved in the past. We can only look at the application that we have before us. And as has been said, we're not required to say why other sites may be better than this one. We are only required to consider the application before us. And the technical consultees that we have consulted with have all said that they have no objections subject to conditions. It's also important to emphasise that we shouldn't be refusing something if we feel that the imposition of conditions can overcome our concerns. So if we can ask for additional information via condition, then
that really means that we shouldn't be refusing the application. So I think I would just advise members that if you are looking to move a refusal, it needs to be very specific and, as I say, make reference to how it is contrary to development plan policies.
Councillor Julian.
Can we put a condition on it saying that we want a sealed hard cover on it so that there won't be the risk of this overflow of it, shall we say, or flooding on it, or is there any way we can go something down that way?
We could only do that if we were absolutely certain that that is appropriate, and we don't have the knowledge to know whether that is something that can be achieved or is appropriate, which is why we're recommending a condition that requires submission of the details of that, which means that the experts, which is our environmental health colleagues, can then comment on whether the details that have been submitted are acceptable. And if they feel that something that's more substantial, more robust would be preferable, then we can ask for that at that stage. But I don't think now we should be so specific to state that it has to be something in particular.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the concerns that were raised by public speakers earlier in the meeting and some of the concerns that have been raised by members are more appropriate for us to put to environmental protection officers than to our planning officers. Can you, Chair, advise, or can our officers who are in the room advise what possibility there would be in the circumstances where we were to defer this application to the next meeting, that we might get an officer qualified to answer some of those questions in front of us? Because if we will not be able to secure an officer of that nature, we may as well reach a decision on this tonight.
I think that if members were requesting this, an officer from the Environmental Health Division be present, then that's something that can be arranged. But your officers here tonight are satisfied that those officers have considered the details sufficiently and have made their recommendation to us that they have no objections subject to conditions. So, which is why we feel confident in recommending to members that that the application be approved, but subject to those conditions. But yes, in answer to your question, I'm sure that they would come along.
Thank you. Thanks to Councillor Holland. I'm trying to go along with what our officers have said, just in terms of securing an officer and taking on board your point that we may be still in the same position, an officer being here and repeating verbatim what's already been said. I'm not minded to go down that route at the moment. Thank you for your contributions. Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to pick up something which I think came from the response to Councillor Burnett Faulkner's comments. If we are worried about the nature of the topping, so to speak, of this structure, if it is conditioned that that's one of the details that's there, presumably we can be securing in fact that if our environmental health team think that it's more appropriate to have a more solid top to this structure than otherwise, that condition in effect means that the application would only go forward if the applicant was then to comply with what these with what our team said. In other words, for me, again, this is a detail which can be determined as is appropriate by experts, and I would not wish to challenge these people at all, because I simply don't know about this. What we have in front of us this evening is things like the location of this thing, and as I say, My understanding is that it is not for us to say, we think this is the ideal position, you must have it there. It is for us to show that what is proposed in front of us is wrong. And I am not hearing from any of what I've heard from either the team in front of me or the people who've been consulted in the report that that is the case. And in that respect, I still don't see what grounds there are to object to this application.
Thank you, Councillor Dear. Councillor Williams.
Mr. Chairman, with the point on the building and materials used post development, we have somebody from building control actually come or evidence that these built to spec, this little unit is built to spec, and it's been built in other areas, and it's been secured, and there's been no leakage. But actually, it's a secure building, so somebody's an expert, none of us are experts in that. I'm sure the planning officers try the best in the environmental officers. But really, you know, we want to be, in my view, we want to know about that construction of that particular lagoon, but I still feel it's flimsy, and it will not hold the material it's built to contain. And just make that point as well. We're living now in torrential rain, storms that we've never seen before for many years. Global warming. So really, that should be added into the equation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I take the point that can't be speculative in terms of what could happen. I'd love to be in that position and probably be able to get the lottery numbers, the Euro millions. I think if that's a power that's bestowed upon me. I'll just ask officers to come back on that question, Council Williams, because I don't think that that is a reasonable request to ask, because we'd have to apply that to every single application that came forward. Bear in mind, we don't have a building control officer on site, but council we have to rely on outside building control. Maybe that's something that possibly could change in the future. I'll just hand you back to officers now, just for clarification on that very point.
Yeah, I think notwithstanding whether we have building control officers at this council or not, it would be inappropriate for us to request that they came along and commented, because that's totally outside of the remit of the planning system. Building regulations will be considered separately alongside planning. So if we were to write planning permission tonight, the applicant would still need to seek the approval of the building control. So in making a decision on the planning application, we shouldn't and don't need to be involved in the building control matters, because they are covered by other regulations.
Any other council wishing to contribute something different to the conversation? Thank you, Councillor Holland. I do hope you will.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak again, Chair. I have heard what members have said. I'm aware that Councillor Mrs Williams earlier advanced proposal to refuse this application on the basis that there is insufficient information available to us. She hasn't attracted a seconder for that, and no other member has come forward, including Councillor Mr Williams, to suggest that that's something they wish to press to vote. I have every sympathy with the people who've spoken tonight, certainly the public. I'm delighted to see Councillor Whitmore, newly elected, here already representing all of the people she's spoken to for and against this application in the course of her, at the moment, very brief career as a borough councillor. Some of the things that have been mentioned tonight are squarely outside of the remit of this committee as the planning committee. And I hope that members of the public listening, and also members who are going to be voting on this application, have formed an appropriate idea in their mind of what it is that's open to us to challenge, and what it is that we have to rely on outside organisations to enforce. Like many members of this authority, I have very little confidence in the ability of the Environment Agency to regulate, for example, because of well-known issues elsewhere in the borough. Unfortunately, that is not on the table for us to decide tonight. Some of the things that I've heard are of concern. I have heard that there is a flooding risk in the area, despite this forming not being part of a flood risk or an area that is of exceptional flood risk, according to the maps that other people again produce. Clearly, none of the flooding events and the contamination events that have occurred in the past can be related to this, because this proposal isn't in situ. Nobody tonight has suggested to me that the application in front of us will make that worse. What I think has been suggested is that because slurry will be collected in this location, if a lagoon is provided, that in the future, a flooding event could be seriously much worse on the basis that that material could then leach into the environment. That again is not for us to decide. We are deciding on planning principles whether this is appropriate development or inappropriate in the location that's been presented to us. On that basis, Chair, I move the recommendation as printed.
Thank you for that, Councillor Holland. I'll take the proposal to refuse first. I can't support that going forward. There's no evidence to the contrary which support a valid support of that proposal. In the absence of the seconder, that was fair. Councillor Holland, you've formally proposed that we move this application based on the reasons quite clearly and articulately gave the committee. Do I see a seconder to Councillor Holland's proposal? Councillor Fee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think Councillor Holland has articulated probably better than I can the reasons why I would be minded to support this application. Again, I've heard no planning grounds for formulated reason to refuse this application. And regardless of whether we think it ideal or not, that is not what is at stake. What is at stake is whether we can show that this should not happen. And I hear no evidence that that is the case.
Thank you, Councillor Fee. So we've had it formally proposed and formally seconded that we approve this recommendation based on the revised recommendations contained in the supplementary report. Can I see a show of hands, please, in support of the recommendation? Can I see those against? Any abstentions? That item is clearly passed. That item is approved. Thank you. Brings us to the next item of business, item 9, application for financial assistance for the historic buildings grant. And on pages 59 to 60 of the agenda pack.
Nothing to add to the agenda report on this one, thank you.
Councillors, over to you. Councillor Fee.
Happy to move this, Mr. Chairman. I came across this curious monument a good number of years ago on one of my sort of Sunday afternoon cycling trips. I found it quite extraordinary. I thought it was some sort of grave at first, but manifestly it's not. But I very much want to see it remain standing up, so I'm very much in favour of this application.
Thank you, Councillor Fee. Any other
Seconded.
I'll second that.
Councillor Bennett, Altman, you're seconding that. Okay, it's seconded. Opposed? Let's see a show of hands, please, in support of that. That's great. Thank you. That item is unanimously agreed. Item is recommended for approval. And is approved. Finally, we go to item 10 of the agenda, landing dock school, Bentley, pages 61 to 62. Do we have an update? In that case, we as a committee intend to receive the information and to keep it on the agenda about the basis.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. But yeah, the Romans could have built this road. That's all. Yeah, nothing against the Romans. They're fantastic work. the country in the world, but so this is absolutely ridiculous. It's all agreed by it, and I'm pleased that it's back on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Your comments are duly noted, and Ombudsman actually agrees. It has been on there a rather long time, so this item remains on the agenda. Future. I have no items of urgent business. Do you have any? No urgent business. So in that case, I draw the committee meeting to a close. Thank you for your help and assistance tonight. Have a safe journey home. And for those joining us at home, I hope you've enjoyed tonight.